Welcome back to the channel, guys. Have the doors open in my shop today because I forgot to turn the air conditioning on, and we're still in Texas here in November. But anyway, this is VIN 1572, and it just popped up on Cars and Bids here at the beginning of November 2025 in Irving, Texas, which is the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It is a 2016 paint code 223, which is caviar, black with gold flake, with the LA30 or red interior. Now, it has 61,000 miles, and it looks like it started its life in Michigan and then until about 2021, and then on to Georgia and Texas. But in Michigan, basically the first 43,000 miles and 5 or 6 years of life of this car were in Michigan. So hopefully not too winter driven. We'll get to that here in a minute. Production statistics, 447 out of the 2,348 cars that I've identified for the US, 49 everywhere except Hawaii were caviar. Of those 447, 201 had LA30 red interior. Specific for 2016, 284 out of the 1,417 cars were caviar, and of those 284, 127 had LA30 interior. So this car is one of 127 that exist in this color combination for 2016, or if you look at all years, 201, one of 201 cars. As far as rarity goes, it is the 4th most common color. As far as color combination, white with red, white with black, black with black, and then black with red. So this is the 4th most common. Carfax, Epic VIN, and AutoCheck. So Carfax shows this as a 4-owner, no accident car. Epic VIN shows this as a 4-owner, no accident car. And AutoCheck shows this as a 3-owner, no accident car. And I'm not quite sure why, but I think it's safe to assume that this is a 4-owner, no accident car. Now, previous sales, it was first on sale in Michigan in April of 2016. It was still for sale in April of 2017, a year later, and it looks like it finally sold in July of 2017 with about 3,500 miles. So a year and 3 months that it was for sale. Not out of the ordinary to see that for these cars. The dealers did not discount them. Of course, being in Michigan, they didn't sell in the wintertime either. It looks like it was leased from the first owner, and then I don't know if they gave it back. Well, yeah, I guess they gave it back because it looks like at around October of 2020, it was next up for sale in Michigan, so probably a lease return. If it started in 17, it was a 3-year lease. And so anyway, in October of 2020 in Michigan, it didn't have a price listed, but it looks like around 32,000 miles, and it sold 3 weeks later, and then on to CarMax in July of 2022, $58,000 with 43,000 miles in Illinois. Now it looks like it has a chrome delete. It looks like the silver around the windows is now black, so it has a wrap. And it does look like it's missing the GS on the rear emblem or on the rear trunk lid. And the front carbon fiber looks like it on the bumper, it looks like it has been wrapped or covered otherwise, because the normal carbon fiber weave on the front bumper, it goes a certain direction, and this weave is going the other direction. So it's either been refinished or overlaid, or it's a wrap, most likely a wrap. That also probably tells me that underneath it's probably chipped, which is really common to see for the carbon fiber pieces on these cars. After being for sale at CarMax, July of 2022, it is now yet again at CarMax in March of 2024, which appears to be where this current owner acquired it. It was for sale for $43,000 with 52,000 miles in South Carolina. CarMax, Carvana, those kind of places, you don't haggle, you can't change the price, so he probably paid $43,000 for it. And now here it is in the beginning of November 2025 on Cars and Bids for a 7-day auction. So now onto the photos. It looks very clean overall, but the things that stand out to me are the lower front bumper. It has some damage, which the corners of the front bumper, that's a pretty common spot to find on these cars where there is some damage. It's either from parking curbs or a curb parking in the city, or something like that, but nothing out of the ordinary in that regard. But it's just, it looks like it probably doesn't have paint protection film when it has damage like that. So the front tires, the right front tire, if you look at this photo at about the 11 o'clock position, it looks like the tires either got a bubble, the wheel is bent, or both. All of the wheels appear to have a little bit of curb rash as well, but something's going on there. The front tires have 2021, 2022 date codes on it, so they're not extremely old, but the front tires look like they've had some, I don't know, for lack of a better term, some spirited driving that has gone on, or they're just worn out. It's, maybe time to replace the front tires. But the rear tires look like they have 2024 date codes, and they look much newer than the fronts. So obviously the rears look like they're good. Fronts probably want to put money aside to replace them. On the roof, something around the sunroof looks like tape marks. I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe the sunroof was replaced, or I'm not really sure. In the auction, if you look at the comments, Z-Freak, that's me. I'm also Z-Freak on Club Lexus, but I'm the one that was asking the questions to the seller in this auction about what those tape marks are, and he just said it's tape marks. That's all he said, but it'll probably polish out, but that's just something of note. But I mean, overall, it's got 60,000 miles on it. It's almost 10 years old. There's a couple scratches here and there, nothing to be concerned with. Life happens. It was used. I don't have unreasonable expectations for a car like this with 60,000 miles. So it looks great for what it is. And so this would definitely be one that you would get in and drive, and if it gets a little scratch here or there, you don't worry about it. This would not be one for a collector. So on the interior, the bolsters, everything else looks great. I don't see any excessive wear on the steering wheel. The carbon fiber trim, of course, is delaminating like they all are. The passenger side front trim, it's starting. The console is starting, and it looks like maybe the driver's front door is starting to delaminate too. Service history, when we get to it, you'll see none of them have been replaced. So the common 5 front pieces, the left and right dash pieces, the left and right front doors, and the center console will all delaminate on this car eventually. Put money aside for that. Either send it off to like SMA Fabrication in Florida. I've used him for this car. He will refinish or overlay if it's damaged, but you have to remove the parts and send them to him. Sorry about the jet going overhead. But I do have a discount code if you want to use that, all things F, for 10% off your entire order. And I don't see a dime from it. He's not a sponsor. I'm just helping out a small business, and I use him as well. Another thing I noticed back with the CarMax photos, so it originally had a chrome delete. That looks like it's now been removed, but the front bumper, something going on with that carbon fiber. It looks like it's probably had a wrap on top of it. And when I bought my car, it had a wrap on it that is like a fake carbon fiber vinyl. That's what mine had. That looked like what's going on here. Pretty common to see that. I've seen other cars that have it. Basically, instead of paying $8,000 for a new piece or several $100s to refinish it, you just slap on a $20 piece of vinyl or less than that, and it looks mostly like it was original. The other big thing is the front logo looks hazy. And that is a common thing that you see on these cars, especially if they've been outside a lot, that the clear plastic in front of the logo, it starts to become hazy, much like headlights and things like that. That is a very expensive piece to replace. If you've watched my videos on replacing or removing the front bumper or the front emblem, that piece can be like $500. And there is a different version from the one that does and does not have the radar cruise control. I don't know if it's some kind of special transparent logo behind it, or I don't know, but just know that if you can't refinish that, then it's going to be $400 or $500 to replace that. Now you can remove that logo without removing the whole front bumper. If you remove the front cover on top of the radiator, it's about 10 clips or so. There's 2 bolts that hold it in, and you can remove it and polish it, whatever you need to do. But that is, something of note there. But I think that overall it presents itself very well. It's a car that's been used. It's a car that's been driven. Nothing out of the ordinary. I don't see any red flags here. Maybe something with that front tire, but just factor it in. You're going to need to refinish the carbon fiber. You're going to need to replace front tires. Service history. So this car is pretty well dealer serviced, not entirely dealer serviced, but pretty well dealer serviced. And it's mainly just tires, wheel repairs. It looks like they had the extended warranty or contract for refinishing and repairing wheels. There were a lot of them, and living in Michigan, I'm sure, lots of potholes, lots of crappy, terrible roads there. I've visited, but I've never lived there, but I understand. So remember, this car wasn't in service until mid-2017. So the first entry of note is really March of 2018 is the JLB recall. That is the high pressure fuel pumps. Most of these cars have that done. It's done on this car. June of 2022, the KLG customer service campaign is done. That is the GPS location where it doesn't show you, like you'll maybe be over on the main road and it'll show you off on the side road or something like that. That corrects that. So it's done on this car as well. November of 2022 at 43,000 miles, it looks like someone did a pre-purchase inspection, probably, they were looking to buy it at CarMax and they took it to the Lexus dealer to have a pre-purchase inspection. They noted that it needed rear brake pads, 2 tires, and some kind of suspension concern. I don't know if that was lower control arm bushings or something like that. It doesn't go into detail, but Somebody did a pre-purchase inspection before they bought it, but it wasn't this owner. March of 2023, 46,000 miles, the passenger front and the passenger rear tires were replaced at 2023. So the passenger front tire also looks, that's the one that has the bubble in it now, so probably needs to be replaced again, but it only has 46,000. It's got like 15,000 miles on them. So, these Michelin Pilot Sports and Pilot Super Sports expect to get 20 to 30,000 miles out of them. So in theory, it's probably like half worn on that front right tire. But it's definitely something to look into is tires on this car. August of 2023, 49,000 miles, the rear pads and rear rotors were replaced. So that means the rear pads have about 12,000 miles on them, something like that. Rear pads and rotors, you can expect to get 40 to 50,000 miles out of them. So rear brakes, you're fine, good to go. April of 2024, they were asking for a quote for the sunroof seal replacement. And if you've watched any of my other videos, that's kind of a common area of concern with these cars is the sunroof rattle. And what happens is the seal shrinks over time and it causes the sunroof to rattle. There are some adjustments as to the track and everything, so you can kind of shore it up a little bit so it doesn't rattle. But the seal itself is like $40 to $50. If you take it to a dealer, they'll charge you about $200 to replace it. So it looks like that's what they were doing here. So if you go drive this, open the sunroof shade and listen for any rattles, things like that. But that may be a question to ask in the auction as well, if that sunroof seal was ever replaced. But it doesn't look like it was done there. And then they also noted a droning noise from the exhaust, and it doesn't say what was done. And the oil filter housing was loose and leaking. That was probably just the last time the oil was changed. Somebody didn't put the O-ring back on right and it kind of bound up. I've had that happen on these cars before. Not a big deal there. June of 2024, the low pressure fuel pump was reprogrammed. That is another customer service campaign that's real common to see on these cars. It's the buzzing or humming that you hear from the back seats. The 16s, 17s, and some of the 18s were affected by that. It's a simple reprogram and it's resolved, and this car has it done. And so the last service at the dealer is October of 2024, about a year ago, 58,000 miles, and it was just an oil change. So there is additional service after that the seller had provided on the Cars and Bids auction, and it says at 58,000 miles in November of 2024, front pads and rotors were replaced. It looks like he had a Mitsubishi dealer in Irving do it, but it doesn't say what brand of pads, so that may be something to ask in the auction as well. If they were OEM Brimbos, were they power stop, what did he use? But basically, the front brakes are done. So the rear brakes were done at the Lexus dealer, so you know those are OEM Toyota Brembo parts. The fronts, figure out what they are, and basically it's done. At that same service, he also had the brake fluid flushed and the spark plugs replaced. The 60,000 mile service, that's the big part of that is spark plug replacement, but belts, inspecting the other things, transmission service, TVD service, that kind of stuff I don't see anywhere where it's been done. So unless the seller did it, I would say plan on doing transmission service, the TVD, torque vectoring differential. So that's two clutch pack units, torque vectoring modules, and the actual differential itself, and front tires and carbon fiber. That's basically all I'd see. The other things to inspect, of course, being that this is a 2016, now coming up, the valley plate. Inspect the valley plate, make sure that there are no leaks. If there are, you're going to be on the hook for $1,500 to $2,000 to repair that. This car, it is age and heat cycles. It's not necessarily mileage. I've seen cars with 35,000. I've seen cars with 200,000 before it first leaks. And so this car, it just kind of depends on how it was used. If it was a lot of short trips, it's not unreasonable to expect to have to do the valley plate on this. If you don't have access to a scope, or if you're not going to do a pre-purchase inspection, take a look at the coolant overflow reservoir. If it hasn't been topped off, if it looks low, then you may have a leaking valley plate. But I said lower control arm bushings, front lower control arm bushings, that would be something to look at, especially because this car has older tires on the front. It should be easy to figure out. If it has wear on the inside of the front tires, then you're going to be on the hook for 2 tires, which you already need to replace on this car, is what it looks like. Lower control arm bushings and an alignment. So that can get kind of spendy too. The only other things I don't see done, which are not really a big deal, is the ZLZ customer service program. That's the sticky delaminating dash. Some people, like myself, have had success getting Lexus to also replace those 2 front carbon fiber pieces that delaminate on the dash, but they only cover those. That's been kind of hit or miss. There's some people that are still having success with Lexus covering those. Others, Lexus told them to go pound sand. So this car is covered since the in-service date was in 2017. You're covered until 2027 for that under this customer service program for getting your dash replaced. After that, the part's not that expensive. It's less than $100. It's just all labor. It's very expensive. I don't see anything about the AC servo sweep, which is reprogramming the servos when you're setting one side to hot, the other side to cold, and it's not responding or something like that. But if you're looking at this car, let it get up to full temperature. So the little diamond in the middle that shows the heat, make sure it's right in the middle, or the water temperature, make sure it's right in the middle, and then set one side to hot, set the other side to cold, cycle through the defrost, the head, the feet, the rear, and then switch, make sure everything responds like it should. And so that would be something that hasn't been done. The servo sweep typically resolves that, but if it continues, then you have bad servos. And so if you're gonna get the ZLZ done while the dash is out, pay the dealer to go ahead and replace those servos, because otherwise the dash has to come out again to replace some of them, not all of them. But yeah, like it basically looks, for the most part, ready to go, subject to the usual things that you have to inspect: the lower control arms, the valley plate, the brakes, but the brakes have been done, so that's done. The sunroof seal, figure out what's going on, ask the seller in the comments if he replaced the sunroof seal. But would I buy this? Absolutely. Where do I think it's gonna be price-wise? So where the market is, the market's been kind of weird these last couple months. A couple of the last recent sales for a 2016 was like $56,000. And if I'm not mistaken, similar mileage. I don't have it in my notes, but I'll leave you a screenshot of it right here. And so these cars, I don't think this car is going to fetch that kind of money, but it definitely could if there's two people that really want it. So a couple things that this thing has going for it is that it is a clean title, no accident car. You've heard me talk about in other videos, there are less than 1,000 of these cars left already, here 10 years on, that have clean title, no accidents. There are so many of these cars that have accidents because the front grille on the front end, if you were to replace that right now, that part is like $13,000 to replace, just ridiculously expensive. So if you hit just like something in the road, it can basically total, if you had a higher mileage one of these, it can total the car just by grille replacement, that's it. But the whole front end, the oil cooler, the headlights, the grille, all of that stuff is extremely expensive on these cars. And so that's why there's so many, because people go, oh, well, I'll just buy a new grill if I hit something. Well, and then they go and look at the parts price and it's $13,000. Well, I'm going to turn that in under my insurance. So then it shows up as an accident or damage reported. And so that's why you have so many of these cars that have that kind of report on the Carfax or the auto check. As far as a price goes, I would expect to see this probably in the upper 40s or lower 50s is where I would put it. If I was a dealer selling this car, obviously clean it up, replace the tires, and have it ready to go otherwise. I would expect to probably see this car for sale around $50,000. That would be the number I would put on it, where the market is on this car. So if you get it less than 50 plus fees, then you're probably money ahead, but it's definitely a great one to just get in and drive. So the 60,000 mile service, I would call it almost done. Spark plugs are done, that's the big part of it, but go get the transmission serviced, get the TBD serviced, check for the valley plate leak, front tires, inspect the lower control arm bushings, and I guess replace the carbon fiber if it bothers you, and go drive it. So those would be the things that I would address. If I were buying it, I'm kind of, I'm more anal than the average GSF owner, obviously, but that's what I would do. I would replace the front tires. I would inspect the valley plate, make sure it's not leaking right now. The carbon fiber, I'd probably wait until it gets a lot worse to replace it, so just don't worry about it at the moment. But just go drive it. And it doesn't really have that many red flags. I would get the transmission serviced, I would get the TVD serviced, go drive it. But anyway, that's what I've got for you guys. VIN 1572, go bid on it. I think it's a good one. I would inspect underneath very carefully because it did come from Michigan. Make sure it's not too rusty or anything underneath. Maybe ask for some photos from the seller in the auction there, but it definitely has the potential to be a good one, but just know that going into it that you may have to spend a little bit more money after the purchase price. Thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.